Welcome, welcome, and welcome. Welcome to the Law, Your Money, and You. I'm Roberta, Saphire, an attorney in Sharon, Massachusetts, and
I'm Camille, Barron, a financial coordinator also in Massachusetts. And today, once again, the list is getting so long of all these people who've been on our show that want to come back because they have new information to share.
yes,
And we have one of those guests today.
we have one of those guests today who's a wonderful, wonderful guest, and he has a lot to share. The Register of Probate, or is it Registrar of Probate?
Register.
Oh,
Yeah,
Register.
Registrar of motor vehicles, registrar
Register of Probate. I
colleges,
should know that.
register. So it's a register of deeds
Patrick
and a register
McDermott.
of probate. Patrick McDermott. Thank
Patrick
you.
J. McDermott.
W.
W.
Yep.
Oh.
Patrick J is my cousin, but Patrick W.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll forgive him. So we got the what's the W for, William?
Walter. I was
Oh,
named after both
Walter.
of my grandfathers. So
Both have named Walter.
my dad's father is Patrick, and my mother's father is Walter. So I was
boy.
Patrick Walter.
Patrick Walter, very good.
Oh, so nobody felt left out.
Nobody felt left out. Everybody was part of the.
But
deal.
you have a most important job, and people think it's just a name on a farm, but it's not. So there's a lot of interesting things. You've got a whole list. There's a whole list and a whole other list. Why don't we start? What's new?
Let me reintroduce, because I was honored to be on the show a couple of years ago, and so I've been blessed to be the Register of Probate for Norfolk County for the last 15 years. I was elected first in 2002, re-elected in 08, and then re-elected again in 14. And the Register of Probate is basically the clerk magistrate of the Probate and Family Court for 28 towns of Norfolk County. And my job is dealing with predominantly family law issues regarding child support, child custody issues, divorce, paternity matters, adoptions. And we also deal with probate matters regarding guardianships of incapacitated people, guardianships of minors, and certainly estate administration. So it's a big group of topics that we deal with on a day-to-day basis at the probate court, and I'm blessed with a great group of staff that help members of the public. By and large, we have about a 65 to 70% population of pro se litigants that come in and need services in the court that don't have lawyers to represent
Pro
them.
se means no lawyers.
No lawyers.
But a few years ago, you were big shorthanded. I don't know if you still are, because a lot of attorneys, like myself and some others, volunteered. How's that going?
The last, I want to say the last 5 to 10 years, the last 5 or 6 years, I should say, the Commonwealth has gone through a substantial economic problems over those short period of time, and the trial court fell victim to that. So we had substantial losses in our staff. And I think the last time I was here, we were probably at the lowest point. We're starting to build back up, which is good. The economy's gotten a little bit better. I've basically lost through attrition about a third of my staff over the course of the last few years. We're just starting to build that back now. And we really had to invest in our volunteer programs. I don't like to have to do that, but we were in desperate times, and I felt an obligation to the people that I represented to make sure that they had access to the court system. And fortunately, through the relationships that I've built up over the years as a member and a past president of the Norfolk County Bar Association and a member of the Mass Bar, I was able to cultivate those relationships with my attorney friends that were willing to lend a hand. So we put together a very successful Lawyer of the Day program, which you've been a member of, I believe, in the past. And we have a lawyer that comes in every day from 9 to 3, oftentimes stays well past the hour of 3 o'clock, working with litigants that don't have the financial means to hire an attorney, or they just don't know yet what they might need, and they come into the courthouse. We have that lawyer available for them every day. We also have volunteer lawyers that help with guardianship issues. So every Wednesday from 10 to 3, we have volunteer guardianship lawyers. So typically, a guardianship has to be put in place when an individual becomes incapacitated. So that could be an elderly parent that might have Alzheimer's. It could be a young person that gets in a car accident and has severe brain injuries that can't and loses cognitive functioning. And so that guardianship clinic is extremely important.
What's the difference between having a guardianship or a power of attorney in those situations?
So a power of attorney, and that basically the guardianship issue is, and I always advise people about, the reason why you need to get a guardianship is because you most likely did not plan accordingly and get a power of attorney in place. So if you don't have a power of attorney, which is a document that you would, it's an instrument that you would sign and pick a person to handle your affairs in the event that you were to become incapacitated. That power of attorney is a powerful document to have. When you don't have a power of attorney, you're required to petition the court to basically give you the authority over somebody else, and basically it's taken away their rights to represent their own interests because of that injury or because of that incapacity. So the guardianship clinic that we have on Wednesdays helps a lot of people that come into the court in desperate times. I mean, we've dealt with now, and it's no new issue with the opioid addiction issue throughout the Commonwealth, throughout our country. We have a lot of grandparents that are coming in needing to take guardianship of their grandchildren because their kids, one mom or dad are addicted to heroin or severe alcohol issues. So we've seen a lot of that uptick in grandparents coming in to be guardians for their grandchildren.
I remember years ago when they said the grandparents had no standing.
They don't, and that's the interesting
still
thing.
don't?
If a grandparent wants to, and it is a sad state of affairs, that parents have rights to raise their kids as they see fit. And grandparents who may wish to have visitation or a relationship with their grandchildren, which I always encourage, we all would encourage that. But grandparents, in order to file and get a court to adjudicate that they are entitled to visitation with their grandchildren, outside of and above the parents making it permission, they need to really demonstrate to the court a substantial likelihood of harm to the child if, in fact, the grandparent didn't get the right to be with their grandchildren. That's a high bar to set for a grandparent to come in. It's a sad case when that comes in. I wish it didn't happen as often as it did, but there are families that are obviously in fights that don't get along, and it's a sad state of affairs. And we hope that through some services that we offer at the court, our mediation clinics that we have, our mediation services in Norfolk County, our probation office that does a great job doing dispute intervention, tries to work with those litigants to get them through. And once again, it's our volunteers that have helped us through those tough times.
Nice.
And now we're at a point now that we're coming out of the other side. We're actually starting to hire again, which is great. The problem with that, of course, is I've put together about a year and a half plan, because when you lose these long-term employees that combined have hundreds of years of knowledge that are now retiring or leaving state service, and bringing new folks in, which is great, but you're losing that institutional knowledge. So that training portion is going to take a lot, and there's so many new procedures and new things in place that it'll take a while for us to come around and have a full service operation. But so far we're holding our own, and we like to maintain a great reputation of access to justice for the constituents that we represent in Norfolk County.
That's fantastic.
So we're having fun.
Yeah. Some of the old timers there, they know more than the lawyers.
Well, that's the interesting
clerks,
thing. A lot of the
clerks.
clerks, I don't have, we have a couple of lawyers that work on staff, but the vast majority of my staff are folks that have worked in the courthouse for many, many years. And many lawyers come to the front counter and are at the mercy of the clerks for procedures and trying to get through. I mean, we're in year 6, I think, of the Massachusetts Uniform Probate Code, and there's still not a lot. There's not a lot of folks that are still 100% comfortable on that. We actively do continuing legal education for lawyers. We educate the public through a lot of informational flyers that we have available for how to probate an estate. What do you do when you find that a loved one has an abandoned property or feels as though there's a bank account that needs access to? So there's a lot of those things that we have to educate the public on, and the clerks do a great job. My staff does a fantastic job in helping people through what is oftentimes a very complicated process, and we try to simplify it as best as we can.
Now, don't most people have estate planning in place? And one of the reasons they say is to avoid probate. It makes it sound like such an awful,
I don't
awful
want to
place.
come see me. I'm not that bad of a guy.
Probate is just it's a way of transferring property in estates.
Correct, and I always think, when I go out and speak on shows like yours, or when I get to speak in front of councils on aging, or any group, Rotary groups, Kiwanis groups, whoever will listen to my pitch, I often talk a lot about the estate issues. And as much as most of the lawyers that are out in the community, part of their tagline is to avoid probate. And that's not a bad idea, just because probate it is a process that takes, at least a year. So when a person dies, your estate is by statute open for a year for creditors to come in and possibly lay claim to, the decedent's estate if in fact they owed money during their lifetime. With proper estate planning, which I do encourage, at the very minimum, just so that people have their bases all lined up. You should have a power of attorney just in case you get incapacitated during your lifetime. That power of attorney is good during your life. So that avoids the probate court regarding guardianship and conservatorship issues. So anything relative to your ability to make legal decisions or to manage money, that helps that cause. So the other thing is to have a healthcare proxy. Once again, helps with the guardianship issue. And then certainly your will. A will or a trust helps to avoid going through the probate process. Not necessarily the trust issue does, definitely, but the will at least will put together a plan. So in the event that there are assets after you pass on, at least your will dictate how that asset is going to be passed on to your loved ones. And the probate process has been simplified a lot more than it had been in the past. We still have an older procedure in place, which is known as a formal probate, which is similar to how we used to do things years ago, that one would file the estate with the probate court. We would, you'd see a legal ad in the back of a newspaper that says this estate's being probated and somebody's going to be appointed to represent the interest of the decedent. And that process takes anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks before it gets through. Under the Uniform Probate Code, we've simplified and we've come up with an informal process that allows people to get appointed within a week of a person passing away.
And they don't call them executors anymore.
No,
Representative.
the old term of executor or
Yeah,
administratrix are now personal representatives, we call them. So it makes it uniform, right? Anytime a person will come to present themselves to represent the interest of a decedent, they'd be known as a personal representative. And that informal process we've put in place so that for the a lot of these cases, there's an intact family that there's no dispute relative to the issues. They have everybody's assents that all parties agree. So we have this informal process that allows the person to come in, get appointed, and move on without any further court intervention. And we're not chasing people for accounts. We don't ask them what they're doing. They're obligated as a fiduciary to take care of the estate.
And what if they don't file an account?
There's no requirement to file one.
So they can just, it's like they can just sit forever. Some of it's used for not so good purpose. Like they'll
Correct.
just sit on it forever. Or I remember when I was volunteering there, each time somebody else walked in, my father put the property in my brother and his name jointly, and when my father passed away, my brother was supposed to divide it up among all of us, but my brother's saying, no, it's mine.
Yep, it happens. And
It happened years ago, it happens all the time, and you think that one brother or sister won't do that to the other sibling, but something happens.
And there's always a remedy, either at law or in equity, to remedy those situations, and the informal process generally is not available under those circumstances. So most folks, if they know that there may be a contested issue, will file formally with the court. Everybody's given formal notice of the proceeding. The judge is usually directly involved with getting somebody appointed. Oftentimes there will be will contests. People will say that so-and-so took influence over mom and had her sign a will fraudulently on a, they call them a deathbed will.
Yeah, I used to say the last person who visited is the one that inherits.
It's and it does happen, and we've actually get to the point, when it comes to contested probates. There was such, and this is my work with the Massachusetts Bar Association. I serve on their probate council, and what we found is there was a substantial backlog of probate cases that weren't getting heard, only because of the volume of domestic cases, which tend to take a little bit more of a priority. So we've put together in Norfolk, as a pilot program, the ability of families who have a contested matter, who don't want to wait a year or 2 years. We've actually put together what's known as a fiduciary litigation session.
Wow.
So we actually have a recalled judge, a retired judge who's been recalled back to the bench, who sits 3 days a week, and she is hearing cases from Norfolk, Suffolk, and Middlesex counties. So we're kind of a regional specialty court for contested litigation regarding probates. And unfortunately, there's a lot of litigation in families. We see, with anything that there's substantial amount of money or property involved, inevitably you're going to have contests.
And these cases that you're talking about, these would exclude those who already have their estate plans in place, right? If they have trusts and wills and they don't have to go to probate.
And that's the idea. If you meet, and I always emphasize to anybody that's watching our show here or when I go out to speak, we're filming this now in January, so it's the new year still, and you should always have on your New Year's list, let me review the estate plan. Your estate does change from time to time, circumstances change, families change, new children, grandchildren come on board, and a simple review with a qualified, competent estate planning attorney will walk you through that. I am not a tax person at all, but we obviously know of the new tax laws. So taxes come into play too when it comes to estates and when it comes to when you transfer wealth. So sitting down with a qualified, competent estate attorney that has a little knowledge of tax as well is very important. You should be reviewing those every year.
If there are contested cases within that realm, those are not ones that would be coming to the probate court, correct?
They could be if you put for instance a trust. Let's say you've established a trust. And you think everything's great, but at the end of the day, if there's ambiguity in the trust, or if there's a contested issue within the trust itself, that could be put forward into a general trust petition. It could be a contested trust, an equity matter.
I got another funny one.
Those
So
can come in.
the new tax laws. Well, that might change again. And somebody's on their deathbed in December, and the tax law is going to change in January. They go, hold out for 10 more minutes.
Get me into the new year.
10 more minutes.
There's a lot of things that go on.
That's probably really happens too.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I got my wills in place years ago when my kids were little, and we go on a trip. I wanted to make sure who had when the kids are little, the people out there got to worry about who's going to take care of the kids. And the same person who takes care of the kids you may not want them to take care of the money. I had it all done. The only thing is I forgot to sign them.
Oh, you got to sign them. No good.
So this time, you got to be kidding. So this time, I got all my wills in place, especially after the new probate thing changed. I changed it, got out the other words, and I had it all signed and everything. But I can't for the life of me remember where I put them.
Well, what's interesting, and I have to, I need to promote our program a little bit more.
Oh, filing the
in terms of filing your will.
Oh yeah, tell us.
So the issue often comes, and sometimes I have some great debates and discussions with my colleagues in the law about this issue. So if you're an attorney that does an estate plan for a client. Oftentimes the attorney's holding on to that will, all the originals, it's in their file because they're hoping that they'll probably probate it down the road, which is fine, it's good business. Unfortunately, those wills can sit in a lawyer's office for years and go into the archives and I can't tell you how many times I get an email from the Norfolk County Bar Association saying, hey, if anybody knows where Joe
Right.
Smith's will is, if anybody's out there. Oftentimes lawyers retire and they forget. that
Not
they
every
had-
state does that,
so
too.
what we have is a program called the Will File Program that it's by statute that you can actually file your will with the Probate and Family Court. It's all sealed. The only one that has access to that is either the person that made the will or the person who is named in the will to probate it. And it's a simple process that and you can come in, file it, can review it every few years.
Isn't there a small fee, or is there no
It's
fee?
$75 to
But
file.
it's forever.
But it's
You can-
forever.
you
It's a
can
one-time
take
fee.
out- Yeah,
And unless you have to file a multiple document, but you
Right.
can always refile in the same case
That's-
file.
that's
But I think it's a safe
wonderful.
place because oftentimes, the law requires me to keep a record of all of the people that have filed that will. Because oftentimes somebody files in Norfolk, for instance, but then they move to Plymouth,
Right,
at the
different
estate. So
county.
I'm supposed to be able to monitor, not that I get notices of when people pass away, but if somebody approaches me and says, can you check your wills to see if anything's on file for Mary Smith? If I have that Smith file there, I'm obligated to then transfer that to the Plymouth Probate Court to make it happen. But I think it's a safe bet. It's like your own personal library, filing your documents with the Probate Court, knowing they're going to be protected. They're always there. And it's something that I think it just gives that added layer of protection.
yeah, that thing about the attorney holding on to it. I know, I had a client that wanted his will, and I opened up, I says, here, I gave it back to you, because the first person they look for is either their lawyer or their accountant's holding on to whatever documents they're at. They don't bother looking for it, they know you have it. So I said, I have a receipt. He says, oh yeah, but I gave it back to you after that. Well, where's your receipt? I didn't need one. So you are better off as a rule. Any young attorney out there, even old attorney, file it.
Yeah, do a will file with the probate
Yeah.
court. The other odd and ironic thing that happens oftentimes, so the attorney does the paperwork, does the will, everything's executed properly, gives the package to the client, and then the client thinks they want to make sure it's secured, so they put it in a safe deposit box, right?
The safety deposit
Well, the
box.
problem comes is, okay, that my will is in my safety deposit box, now I die. The only one who has access to that safe deposit box is me,
Right,
or
no,
my
they're-
personal representative.
They have to
Well,
go to court.
you'd have to go to
Yeah.
court in order to get a court order to open up the safety deposit box. So that will locked in the safety deposit
Right.
box technically isn't good enough to actually get the will probated. You actually have to somebody appointed to open up the safety deposit box. So it's an extra step. So it doesn't necessarily, unless you have that another person's name on the safety deposit box, that's the only
Yeah,
way
the
you can
old
actually do it.
wife. And the old wife comes in and sees the new will, rips it all up.
It
I don't
can-
know what you're talking about.
It can be. Things can happen. Things can happen. Anything can happen in the family, for sure.
One thing before we close, because
Yeah.
we're getting to our
I'm sure.
segment, you've got to be kidding, but
Oh, you gotta be kidding.
we've had people come on and talk about abandoned property.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So the State Treasurer's Office has put together a great program regarding abandoned property. So a lot of times what will happen if you have an old bank account, or sometimes it's a life insurance policy or anything. It could be a refund from whatever, a credit card company that you overpaid and they sent you a rebate check and you never cashed it. Eventually the banks abandon this property to the State Treasurer. And the State Treasurer, most of us know, every quarter I think that Treasurer Goldberg issues her list of abandoned property. And she also has a great website, and I forget what it is off the top of my head, but if you look for, I think it's findmassmoney.com,
Yeah.
I think. And you can research names. You can research your own name, you can research a loved one. And if in fact you find, and oftentimes what people will find is a loved one who's passed away, and I found my own mother who Patricia A. Burke at the time, you then will need to present to the State Treasurer evidence that you are entitled to that property. Now, most of the abandoned property at the State Treasurer's office, the vast majority of it, is valued less than $25,000. Well, a lot of times it's a couple of $1,000, but hey, it's a week's worth of
Sure.
groceries or maybe a
Yeah.
rental payment, mortgage payment. So what people need to do is come into the probate court, provided the value of the estate, and this isn't just for abandoned property, this is any kind of estate that has less than $25,000. you can file what's known as a voluntary statement of administration, and that is the real simple approach to estate administration.
Like a one-page.
It's technically it's a 3-pager, but it is like it's a one-stop shop. It lists your name, who the decedent is, what your relationship to that person is, and we are then allowed to give you a certified copy of that statement that you have agreed to take care of that asset. Take it to the state treasurer. You can get that asset back in your possession and distribute it according to either the will or the laws of intestacy.
Is it always financial assets?
Yes.
Or
it's
is it
always-
tangible property ever?
It could be tangible. It's usually financial assets, but I think that I'm not sure if the state treasurer takes like old jewelry or anything like that, unless they.
That's a good way to find
know.
old criminals.
Old criminals?
Old-
You know, they're on the lam or whatever they say. You know, they find their name, and they had that on TV once with the whole room. The people thought they won the lottery or something, and the whole room, they called out the names, and the whole room was loaded with wanted criminals,
Oh,
and they
God.
just came in and arrested them all.
We haven't had that happen at the probate court yet, but who knows?
Isn't that a good one? We're
we,
giving them ideas out there. You say you've got to be kidding.
better
I
be
think
kidding.
we're in a you've
Oh,
got to be
I have a
kidding
you've got to be
segment.
kidding
This
that,
is this is amazing.
I was
You've
talking
got
with
to
a
be
woman
kidding.
this morning.
Yeah, see,
You've got to be kidding.
To be
kidding.
kidding. I got it. I love it.
I was talking with a woman this morning. It's just interestingly that it came up. She said that her grandmother, after the grandmother died, they did what you said. They went to the abandoned property. There was an account there that was over 6 figures.
Whoa.
oh boy,
Can you imagine that?
they all said it was theirs.
Right.
All
They come out of the woodwork on
yeah,
that
they
front,
all
you
come
know?
out of the woodwork.
They didn't show up at the
Yeah.
funeral, but they'll show up at the probate
Yeah,
court to get
isn't
the
that
money.
Isn't that interesting? Isn't
Yeah,
that
really.
interesting?
Yeah.
What about, I just have a thing, you've got to be kidding. Like in Massachusetts, you can write to the Bar Association and everything if somebody has a will.
Yep.
This. I tried that in Florida, and nobody would do anything. Well, you have no standing. My sister-in-law, who moved to from Massachusetts to Florida with millions, by the way, which she didn't realize she had, but millions, she got Alzheimer's.
Yep.
And, nobody will say anything. Like I have no standing, because her grandchildren,
Florida?
yeah,
Is
her
that the-
grandchildren are still up here, but they're saying they have no standing
Where's the money?
either. I think it's in Florida.
Yeah, so no, and it would be who are the heirs at law, obviously, and
Well,
and
she
that would-
always said how she was setting up a trust so that all the grandchildren
But we don't
got
know where
equally.
that trust
But-
is, right?
Yeah, but I think the money was taken care of by a relative
Uh-oh.
of hers in the investment business,
Yeah.
a one-person office. But anyway, but it's interesting how the court and the lawyers there, the bar associations, well, they don't do that. They don't send a notice out, does anybody have a
That's
a
too
will?
bad, because
We
that's the
do
only way you have
here.
access to it.
We
Yeah.
do here, so you're really.
Yeah, I think
up.
that's
You've
you got to be proactive
kidding.
with that. I mean, that's I think we've the bar associations, the lawyers around town, they're more than willing to step up and help out.
We have about 1 minute left.
1 minute.
But this is important. You've got to be kidding. You lost a lot of weight, even though you didn't look it. And one of the things you said is you're teaching now. So
Yes.
until they cut us off, I want to hear about what you're doing to teach and that
You know,
wonderful saying you have.
The fun part about it, as I say, when you have shown something of value, you have a moral obligation to share it with other people. And I believe that across the board, whether it's in financial investments or whether it's in real estate or, in my case, weight loss. Now, there's no magic pill. There's no super, potion to take. It got to be motivation and accountability. I had the motivation because I wanted to lose the weight. I needed the accountability, and I happened to get a great person that was involved in a fitness program known as Beachbody. I had done some P90X routines for years, but wasn't getting because I was on and I was off. But once I got an accountability coach, that person coached me through it, kept me would if I hadn't chimed in with him every day, he would chime in with me and yet be motivated. He showed me how to
So
how
you
to
did it
change
too.
nutrition.
We're ending.
And at the end of the day, we got 65
Yeah.
pounds down.
What a great way to end the show.
What was that
We'll talk
expression
about
that you say, your philosophy? You just
you
said it
have-
So
again, but
when you're given something of value, you have a moral obligation to share it with others.
And that's exactly what we do on the Lawyer, Money, and You.
Yeah, I was thinking
We
that.
share,
We
we share
share, we have
the
police
expertise
activity.
of
Yeah.
people who are our guests,
Police officers
police
all over
officer,
the
our friends,
state.
and
Yeah.
that's exactly
We're
why
in-
we're
in
here.
25 towns now, including Boston.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Well, to my friends in Suffolk County,
Right.
yeah, Boston, Suffolk County.
sure.
Yeah.
So we'll
Oh,
wrap
so
up
thi-
now.
yeah, so this is a wrap.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me again. I want to come back a little bit
Bravo.
sooner than later. next
Yeah.
time, 'cause we have a lot of
Yeah.
topics to talk
A
about.
lot to talk
That
about.
all the family law stuff is still it's something important too.
Fantastic. I mean, we didn't even get this whole list. There's a
Nope.
whole list here. There's stuff that, one of the things I haven't
No,
seen
I'd love to
before.
come back and talk about
We will have you
adoptions,
back.
talk about
Oh,
changing
yeah.
names. There's a whole host of things.
Oh, yes. Very
Okay,
good.
you got it.
Okay, so to our viewers, thank you for watching, and we encourage you to please let us hear from you if you have any topics that you think you'd like to hear, or if you have questions about today's topic, we'll be happy to share that with you. Remember, this is your show, the law, your money, and you.